So now we can delete that guy because we're actually going to create him on the fly. But essentially, the only thing we've got left to do really is to make sure that our Sentry Gun can actually acquire new targets, right? So if we manually set it, we can tell it to target a specific thing, but what we want is the AI to actually do that part of it. Why did that just drag off there? Yeah, so let's save that. Probably want to comment this up. Handle event for firing the projectile and playing a sound. Let's just comment this guy up. So current gun rotation, target rotation of gun towards target. We are looking at target, so start firing. That's just if we are not already. And then this bit is essentially we aren't currently looking directly at target, so rotate the gun towards the target. Okay, so the final part of this is to make sure that we've got something that will actually kind of set the target for the gun. And this is the main part of what I was looking for really here is so I was thinking of the mob AI that we were doing as an earlier tutorial, and the thing is that we want to actually have a bunch of potential enemies scored for like how much we want to target them. So I thought maybe the environment query system was the right way to do this. I'll just have a quick slurp of tea. So the environment query system is a new thing that Mishka has added. It's still in experimental stage in 4.6.1, but it allows you to query the world. So I'll show you how to set that up. Let's just create a we might need to go to edit, editor preferences and experimental, and if you look at the AI environment query system, you need to check that checkbox on if it's not like in the version that you're currently using, if it's not just enabled by default. So we'll look at a miscellaneous environment query. So let's create one of those, and what we call it, Sentry query. So the environment query system is a way of like querying information about the actors in the world, things like whether they're visible from a certain point, which actors are in a certain radius, which actors lie on a certain grid position, and those kind of things. So let's have a quick look at it. It looks a little bit like the behavior tree editor, and I'm sure that that's kind of the main point. So let's just think about what we're going to need here, right? So we want to be able to say the Sentry Gun needs to run a query on we want to say actors of class as a generator, so all actors of a specific type, and let's call that the static mesh for now, with a particular radius, so we'll leave that, well, let's say that's 2000 because that's the maximum of our raycast. Well, let's do it like 1900 just to be sure. So anything within a 1900 radius of our guy, we can add some tests to say, okay, so let's add a distance check to say, okay, it's distance to query. Now you'll see there's a bunch of sort of options for the actual kind of thing, and what we're looking for is you can see like the values of the range of things that will actually be tested. So we probably want something like for our distance check, we probably want something like minimum, we want the minimum value, but we want to have it so that it's an inverse linear, so basically the closest actors will get the highest score. So that what that means is that we're looking for the maximum score for distance. So the closer the things are, the higher the score they get, the higher the value they get for the weight. We also want another test to say, have we got visibility on them? So we want to do a trace, and we want the trace values themselves to be kind of essentially everything, right? So we're going to do a line trace on the visibility channel. We can turn off only blocking hits. I'm not entirely sure whether that's actually relevant or not, but we can live with that. It's the query that's actually going to be the thing that's causing the trace. Trace to item we probably want to be true, because we want to say, is the thing visible from us? We want to filter and score. We probably don't want to match the value directly, so let's just save that. So that would be our query, right? So if you want to test a query, what you can do is you can create an EQS testing pawn. So if you go to Blueprint and then search for EQS testing pawn, and create an object of that type. I've just created one already. Now you can say what type of query it is. So let's go for our Sentry query. Give it a second, and it's crashed. So I'll just restart that, so it won't be a second. So let's create a blueprint. It's called an EQS testing pawn. Select that, call it, I don't know, EQS test pawn. Now one thing to note here is that you don't want to set the default for the type of query in here, because it tends to crash. So create your EQS testing pawn, save your level, drag one out into the world. Now this EQS testing pawn is literally just here for testing purposes. It'll allow us to select our Sentry query that we just added, and what you'll see is that it adds some debug value to show us whether our query is working or not. So you can see that the value of the scores change based on where the actor is. So remember, it's only scoring static mesh actors. It's telling us when some of them aren't visible. It's only giving us a score for the ones that are inside the range. Yeah, so if we just sort of nudge forward, yeah. Which is what we want, right? We only want to shoot the closest enemy, essentially, so the one with the highest score value. So it looks like our query's correct, and should be, because I've already tested it. Okay, so that's the way to test your query out. So we've got our Sentry Gun query. So the next part is to just finish off the Sentry Gun blackboard and the behavior tree, and finish off the controller for the Sentry itself. And they're all actually quite simple, to be honest. So and then we can spawn that AI from class and have it work in the world. So let's just get on with that. So the first thing we want to do is we want to open our Sentry behavior tree and make sure that it's associated with your blackboard. So in the blackboard itself, you probably find it a self actor as a default, but we don't need to worry about that one. What we want is a new object, and we're going to call this target actor. Now, it's important you remember this, because this got me quite a few times. Make sure that you drop this down, the key type, and make sure that its basic type is actor. So that's the blackboard value that we're going to fill in using our EQS system. So the behavior tree itself is really quite simple, right? So we're going to take a sequence, and that's going to do a wait task, just because. Let's make sure that set to something smaller, like let's call it, set it to 1. So we're going to wait 1 second, and then we're going to do the EQS query. So run EQS query, and the target we're going to use is the target actor, and the query we're going to use is that new Sentry query. So what that essentially does is it says we're going to, every second or so, we're going to run this EQS query, and the output of that query, which is basically what is the closest static mesh actor, is going to go into our target actor variable. So if we want to change the type of thing we're targeting, we could change the EQS query. We could also pass a parameter into the EQS query to change the type of thing we're looking for. But for now, we're just going to shoot the nearest box. So remember that in the controller, in the graph for the controller, for all of our controllers, we always have to do create the actual behavior tree, right? So in event begin play, the main thing we need to do in the controller is run behavior tree. It'll run it on self. The behavior tree we're going to do is the Sentry BT. So that'll actually run it. But the other thing is that we want to so we'll have a value in our blackboard, and we want to set that as the thing that we're targeting for the Sentry Gun. Now the Sentry Gun itself is going to use this controller. So what we can do is we can actually get so let's get a reference to self. Let's get the blackboard from it. Get blackboard. let's just get a black board. I hate this context sensitive thing, it's always a pain, but whatever. We want to get value as object, and the name of the object, let's just put in a name variable here. Target key name, and the name of the blackboard value that we want to get hold of is target actor. Remember, in our blackboard it's this guy called target actor. So in our controller we want to get the target actor, so let's just get that value. Now we can cast that to an actor. So we're going to do all this stuff in the tick function for now. So we're going to let's just get the controlled pawn. So get controlled pawn. Interesting. It's this one. Make sure you get the right one. So basically, get controlled pawn, because we're a controller that we're using currently to set up, we get the control pawn, which is the actor of the thing that we're doing, and we're going to cast it to a sentry gun. Cast to sentry. Cast to sentry gun. Okay. Maybe it's context sensitive. No, it's not that one. Anyway, we want to cast it to a sentry gun type. Let's just make sure I've saved everything. Yeah, that should be available. Cast to sentry. Default pawn. Yep. Okay, so I remember making exactly the same mistake the first time I did this tutorial. So what we need to do is the sentry gun I created as a type of actor, which would be fine, but it needs to be a sort of AI controlled thing, right? So the sentry gun needs to be in needs to be a pawn, right? So the pawn is the thing that's controlled. So an actor's like just a sort of normal actor in the world. The pawn is the thing that can be controlled by an AI controller, right? So we want our sentry gun to be controlled by a sentry controller. That's why I was having a problem finding this AI part. So if you need to change the type of a blueprint, you can go here and reparent the blueprint to a different type. Our components should be exactly the same. Our graph is exactly the same. So it's just something to watch out for if you ever hit this situation where you want to turn something into an AI controlled thing. You can choose to reparent it. Okay, so that should make it easier. So getting back to our controller, we want to cast this a thing that can be controlled, which is in our case a sentry gun. Hooray! Which is much better. So we in our tick we get our sentry gun and if the cast worked, we cast this guy to an actor, and then we want to set the target for this guy, so set target as actor. The fact that it's called target there is kind of confusing, but yeah. So basically, let's just move that over there, and this one maybe down here. Oop, no. So what we've done is we've sent the thing that we're controlling. We're going to initially get the blackboard from ourselves, get the key name for the target thing. Remember, the target's filled in by our behavior trees EQS query. So the target actor variable from our blueprint, cast it to an actor and set that as the target for our controlled object, which just happens to be the Sentry Gun. So this Sentry controller will work with a Sentry Gun to set its target, and that'll try and do that every tick. So I mean, we could say if this is a valid value or not, but it doesn't really matter right now. So what we finally want to do is we want to go back into our character. I want to fill in the class of thing that we want to spawn, right? So we want to spawn a Sentry Gun. Sentry Gun. So the Sentry Gun, when we spawn it, should, in theory, just target... Oh, let's stop that. Actually play it when we can see it. Oh, we've set it to simulate again, haven't we? So we can spawn our Sentry Gun, and it should target the closest guy to it. Probably want to update the update speed a little bit. So each one will target whatever's the closest box to it. So you can obviously play with the turn rates and things like that. If you shift F1 and select one of them, sorry, shift F1 and eject and select one of them, you can tweak some of the values if you want, and then you can go to where is it? There's an option to like apply simulated something or other. I can't remember where it's got at, but you can change the simulated values. So these guys are just happily shooting away at boxes, essentially. You probably want to update turn rates and that kind of thing, but I'll leave that for you to play around with. So in the next video, what we'll do is we'll take that example. So we've got a working Sentry Gun now. Obviously, we don't necessarily want it to just shoot at static meshes, but it's targeting the closest of a specific type, which is kind of what we wanted. So we'll, in the next video, we'll maybe parameterize the query for the EQS system so we can choose what type of actor we're targeting. We probably want it to be a character, obviously, and we probably want to do the Sentry Gun's kind of movement rotation code to handle proper animation. Obviously, I'll need to do some modelling and animation to make sure that that works first. So that's the first part of the Sentry Gun done. You should be able to play with the Sentry Gun now. I hope that helped you a little bit, and I'll see you in the next one.